Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I want to speak about something that is super powerful and very important, which is the idea of sin, right? Sin is something that we all do. A sin is basically when a human commits an action that goes against moral law, that goes against the Bible, that goes against God's will. If you don't like the word sin, you can replace it with a negative action, with doing something that is not morally correct, with doing something that is wrong. Right? Every human is guilty of this. Every human does this on a consistent basis. If there's something that we're all consistent in, is sinning. We all sin to different degrees, to different levels, but every human being sins. Nobody is totally righteous. Everybody commits wrong actions in their lives to different levels, of course, but everyone sins. It's part of human nature. Everyone does actions that they wish they didn't. We commit actions that we regret in life. And we all do it. We all fall under the moment's temptation, the moment wanting of the pleasure, but then we regret it afterwards. We all do sins, which is actions that we regret, actions that we shouldn't do, actions that cause a stain on the soul. Now, the question is, what are we supposed to do with this? Why am I bringing this up to the table? Now, what I want to speak to you today is not necessarily about your sin, but it's what you do after you sin, because I'll tell you what the real test for you is in life. Your test is not necessarily the sin. Your test is what you do after the sin, because here's what happens with most people. They do something that they know they shouldn't. They commit a wrong action, negative habit, something that is really hard for them to change, and they keep falling under this negative cycle. They commit the negative actions, right? But what happens afterwards? They self-deprecate. They fall into more negative things. They are so mean to themselves. They fall into the spiral of shame and negativity that only brings them lower and lower and lower. And that's really where you mess up. That's where you mess up. Because God knows your weaknesses. God knows you much more than you will ever know yourself. And He knows that you're most likely going to fall. That's not the main test that you have. Your main test is what you do after you fall, right? Because the issue with most people is that after they fall, they stay down. Because most of humanity, especially in our generation, suffers from low self-esteem, from really unhealthy self-esteem. The number one key in being a great soldier in God's army is having a healthy, proper self-esteem. What does that mean? When I fall, when I sin, I don't bring myself down. I'm not going to start being so mean to myself. I'm not going to start being so self-deprecating, because I know that's not the godly thing to do. Most of us are so judgmental towards ourselves, so self-critical, and that's not godly. We fool ourselves into believing that it is. We think that when we sin and afterwards we say, oh, you're the worst person ever, you're such a shame, you're awful. We think that that's righteous, right? But no, that's just the Yetzer Hara, the Satan within all of us talking. Because he knows, the opposing force knows, that after you sin, that's when he can get you. That's when he can really bring you down lower and lower and lower. Because he knows that now you're going to feel bad about yourself. So he's going to get you to do more bad things. Because if I've already done bad, what's doing more bad? I'm already an awful person. I might as well just continue in my streak of being bad. And so when you sin, it's not necessarily the sin that you need to worry about. It's what happens afterwards. That's what I want to talk about today. You need to change your mentality after you sin. Now, I'm not saying that you can go and sin left and right, do morally wrong acts, and then just throw a party about it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that after you sin, have a moment of feeling the guilt, feeling the regret, the remorse, telling God that you're sorry, expressing yourself, confessing yourself, telling yourself you're going to be better. And then after that, should take you about 5 minutes, you move on and you move forward. And you're not going to start being mean to yourself, and you're not going to start bringing yourself down. Because when you have your internal dialogue be mean to you, all that's going to do is get you to do more sins. That's the Yetzer Hara talking. The Yetzer Hara is the evil inclination that exists within inside all of us. Your Yetzer Hara is your internal negative opponent that tries to block you from becoming your greatest self in life. And it knows that when it gets you to sin, that's its opening to bring you to your lowest and lowest and lowest. And so the sin is not necessarily the test. It's what you do after the sin. Because after you sin, you get into depression, you get so negative about yourself, you bring yourself down, And that's not what you're supposed to do. That's the Satan talking. I can't express that enough. I know that you think it's self-righteous to feel awful about yourself after you sin and be mean to yourself, but it's not. It is the ploy of the internal opponent to bring you worse down and down and down. So why is this so important? Number one is because in order to stop yourself from sinning, you need to have a healthy self-esteem. Most times when you sin consecutively, it's because you started with one sin and that led to another, that led to another, and that led to another. Now, if you sin once, but then after that sin, you can break the cycle by saying, okay, I made a mistake, I'm a human being, but I can move forward now. When you do that, you stop this cycle of consistent sinning. However, when you sin once, but then you fall into this negative, mean, depressing mentality, that opens the door to the next sin, and to the next sin, and to the next sin. So how do you stop sinning? Change your mentality right after you sin. When you commit a negative action, stop being mean to yourself. Healthy self-esteem is essential to living a good life. You know, you had Jacob and you had Esau. They were twin brothers raised by the same parents. One came out to be totally righteous and the other one came out to be totally wicked. Why? Because they each had totally different self-esteems. Jacob had a healthy self-esteem. Esau had a very low self-esteem. How so? Jacob believed in himself. He knew he was godly. He knew he was good. And that, yes, he made mistakes in his life. He committed negative actions, but he knew that those weren't him. Those were actions that he committed, but those weren't the truth of who he was. Who he was with a soul from God. And he had a healthy self-esteem. He understood the mercy of the Creator. He understood the forgiveness of the Creator. So when he made a mistake, he got right back up and he started again. Whereas Esau was totally different. He would make a mistake and he had a low self-esteem and all he would tell himself was, oh, you're an awful person. You're the worst. You might as well just keep on going with this lifestyle because you're never going to change. And he would fall into depression because he thought he was such a bad person. And all that did was lead him to more sins and more sins and more sins because he never thought he was worth anything better. He never thought he was worth anything more than being a better person. Your self-esteem defines so much about how you act in life. You know, there's a famous story by Abraham Tversky, Rav Abraham Tversky, his memory forever be a blessing, where his father, when his children would make mistakes, he would never say, oh, you're so awful. You're the worst person. You're terrible for doing this. He would actually tell them what you did is beneath you. That's genius. That's exactly what you need to tell yourself. And if you have kids, what you should tell your kids, that you can associate the negative action with you. You are not that negative action. That negative action is something you did, but it is not defining you. In reality, it's beneath you. You are so holy. You are so pure. You are so actually inherently righteous that action was beneath you. You are worthy of so much more. And that's the mentality that you need to have. You cannot associate what you do with yourself, okay? Because when you do that, you fall into a negative spiral that only leads you down more negativity and more negativity and more negativity. Now, how else do we avoid sinning? Because no one likes to sin, right? People don't feel good about it. We feel awful about it. It brings us down. We regret it. No one wants to do it. So how can we avoid it? When you avoid a sin once, you actually build up your strength to avoid it again. So let's say you are tempted towards something, right? Or let's say you're tempted towards eating a chocolate cake. Not that that's a sin, even though being healthy is service to God and eating unhealthy, some might define it as a sin. But let's say you're tempted to eat a chocolate cake, right? And you're trying not to, you want to be healthy, you don't want to take so much sugar, you're tempted to eat a chocolate cake. And this time you say, no, I'm not going to do it. And you resist the temptation and you don't eat that chocolate cake. What happens next time? Next time you're tempted towards a chocolate cake, you know what you have now? You have more strength and you have more resilience to not eat it because last time you also resisted it. Next time comes, you're tempted with the chocolate cake again, but this time it's much less because you already overcame it 2 times before. The more times that you overcome the temptation to sin, the greater your resilience becomes. So the less tempted you'll be in the future. So the main purpose of this video is to show you that it's not necessarily the sin, it's your reaction after you sin. You have to have the mentality that if God allowed it to happen, then there's a purpose for it. You cannot fall into such self-deprecation. God doesn't like that. God doesn't like when we are mean to ourselves. You know why? Because he made you and you're made in his image. And when you're mean to yourself, you're being mean to God because you're telling God, hey, you did an awful job here. You did awfully here. Why'd you let this happen? Why'd you do this? You have to understand that you are God's child. And that if you had a child that would tell itself, I hate you, you're awful, you're mean, you're unworthy, how would you feel as a parent to see your child talking about themselves like that? It would be an offense to you because you made that. So too happens with God. When you're mean to yourself, you're offending the Creator because he made you in his image and he loves you and he believes in you. And who do you think you are to talk down to yourself when you're made in the image of God? So don't believe it's righteous to be mean to yourself, because it's not. Don't believe that it's righteous for you after you sin to just think that you're so lowly you might as well continue this way. That's not the key. You need healthy self-esteem. Healthy self-esteem is not ego, it's not arrogance, it's godliness, okay? Moses, it's written in the Torah that he was the most humble man to walk this earth. But do you think that meant that he thought he was a nothing? That he treated himself like he was a bad person? Not at all. Moses knew exactly who he was. He was the leader of the people. God would venerate him all the time. Do you think he had low self-esteem? No, because low self-esteem is not the equivalent to humility. Humility is actually realizing your tremendous power and greatness, but knowing it's from God. It's not from you. But humility is not being mean to yourself. It's not low self-esteem. Low self-esteem is actually one of the biggest egos there is. It's one of the biggest works of the opponent inside of humanity, especially in our generation. You see it so clearly. When you see people needing all this external attention that you see both men and women crave so greatly, it's because they have such low self-esteem. When you see the state of our society, the root of it all is low self-esteem. Okay? When you fall into a sin spiral, it's because of the negative self-talk you do to yourself after you sin. So I want you to work on this. After you sin, you're not allowed to be mean to yourself. You're not allowed. You're not allowed. For example, for myself, when I scroll a lot online, I hate myself for it. I get so upset myself. I value time so much, and I hate when I get psyched into this distraction and I waste so much time to myself, and I get so upset with myself. So I work on no longer doing that. Not in the sense of no longer not scrolling. Obviously, I try not to do that, and I try to limit it as much as possible. But if it happens that I do scroll, I do not allow myself to self-deprecate like I used to be mean to myself like I used to, because I found that if I scrolled and I feel down about myself and I start saying all these mean things to myself inside of my head, then that only leads me to commit more things, do more things that I'm not proud of. So if you want to stop sinning, 2 things. Number 1, stop being mean to yourself. It's not about the sin, it's what you do after the sin. Okay? After you sin, realize you're made in the image of God, that if God allowed you to do this, there's a purpose for it. Don't question God. You have to have faith. Faith doesn't just mean that you believe that everything is for your good, external to you. It also means that everything is for your good, for what you do yourself. Even if you made a mistake, even if you committed a wrong action, who let you do that? God did. So if God let you do that, then there is a great purpose for it. There is something better for you to get to because of what you did. So you also have to have faith that your sins were also a part of the purpose of creation, were also a part of your journey that you needed to go through in this life. And when you fall into such utter depression and negativity, that's not godly, okay? It's not righteous, even though I know we're programmed to think that it is, but no, it's not. This lying and guilt and shame and regret, how does it serve you? It doesn't. It doesn't. That's the whole point. Can you serve God when you're filled with shame? Can you serve God when you're filled with just self-deprecation and inner thoughts of utter negativity? No, you cannot. Can you serve God when you're depressed? No, you cannot. God calls you to serve him with joy. And you can't really serve him with joy if you're in a state of negativity. So I thought this video was so important. Obviously, you're going to work on not sinning. Everyone does. Everyone has something in their life that they try to avoid. But if it happens that you do it, because we're bound to, then stop with being mean to yourself afterwards. And of course, the more that you can build up the momentum to not do it and you resist the temptation, the more that you will build the resilience, and the more that you will build the willpower to not do these sins over and over again in the future. And a third way to not sin so much is to do positive actions. The more you fill yourself with positive actions, the more you do more positive and you avoid the negative. So yeah, I really wanted to make this video. I hope this helped you guys out. Work on it. Stop being mean to yourself after you do something that you're not proud of. Realize it's not righteous. Work on your self-esteem by being nice to yourself, realizing that you are made in the image of God. Would you tell other people the things that you say to yourself in your own inner dialogue? Would you be friends with yourself if you had a friend who talked to you the way that you talk to yourself? Self-love, it's the key. You need to love yourself. You need to value yourself because you're made in the image of God. God loves you. God believes in you. He gives you life because he believes in you. Every day that you wake up, you cannot question your worth, your value, why you're here. God only gave you life because he knows that you are capable today to be better than who you were yesterday. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given you life. You must believe in yourself and you must have healthy, proper self-esteem, because that's the number one key to being a proper human in this world with a quality life and quality service to the Creator. So work on your self-esteem. Let me know if I should make a video going more into depth about healthy self-esteem. And yeah, the key to stop sinning is what you do after the sin. Avoid the negative spiral that most of us get to after we sin. And realize that your sin was part of the purpose of creation. Realize that God allowed it to happen and there must be a purpose for it. Usually the purpose is for you to ascend even greater. So yeah, I hope this brought light into your life. I'm not saying that you should just sin all the time, but I'm saying that it's not necessarily about what you do when you sin, it's what you do afterwards. Build the willpower, and yeah, I wish you guys all the best and have a beautiful day. Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed this video. I wanted to let you guys know that I'm giving a new Torah course in about 2.5 weeks. It's going to be about in-depth Torah study, Kabbalah, reincarnation, lots of paradigm shifts, lots of deep Torah wisdom, and I'm really excited to share it with you. This is for people who really want to learn the Bible in a lot of depth and really have the secrets revealed to them. So I hope you can join us. I will leave the link to sign up down below and I hope to see you there. Love you all very much. And yeah, I wanted to let you know about this. So yeah, hope you have a wonderful day and I hope you enjoyed this video.